What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of What I Watched This Month, August edition. This month, I watched so many movies. I'd like to quickly acknowledge that I've officially been doing these monthly watch videos for a year now, and want to thank everyone for watching them, because when I started last year, I didn't think they'd catch on at all. So thanks, back to business. I ended last month by watching The Favorite, but didn't talk about it in the last month's video. This movie just gets me, man. I think Yorgos Lanthimos is one of the most exciting filmmakers working today, and while this may not be my favorite, get it, I think it's his best. It tightly weaves together everything that's made his work so unique, and what you get is an experience like no other. For once, he lets his actors kind of go for it as far as drama goes, and miraculously, you still get that cold, lifeless feeling he's always brought to the screen. With most films, the terms cold and lifeless are words you never want associated with your film, but in this case, I wouldn't have it any other way. Then I watched Beetlejuice. I had seen this before in like 7th grade, but remembered nothing besides the fact that there was some cool grass at some point, so this was basically a first watch. I don't know what that says about what sticks with me and what doesn't, but let's move on. I had a great time with this, as most people do. I think the production design and performances are all so unapologetically obnoxious, most of the time in a good way. Like there's that scene at the dinner table or whatever that's just so fun and stupid. If you don't smile once while watching this, you gotta have some more fun with yourself. Michael Keaton is absolutely wild. I don't think I need to say anything new about that. It's like one of the few times where a live action movie is able to capture the same energy as an animated film. This is the kind of Tim Burton that I love. Then I followed that up with Tim Burton's Big Eyes. Good grief. It's funny because the more I think about Beetlejuice, the more I like it, and the more I think about Big Eyes, well, if I'm being completely honest, this movie is so forgettable, I haven't thought about it a lot. It's so painfully obvious that this only exists to get Oscars. Like, I know sometimes I say that, but this time I really mean it. It's got some period piece production and costume design, performances that feel just slightly off, a Lana Del Rey original song that did not need to happen. It's hilariously dull, and not the first time a movie about a painting that only existed to get Oscars kind of flopped. Then I watched all the Illumination movies. If you want to hear me talk about those for over 20 minutes, go watch that video. Then I watched Richard Linklater's latest film, You Go Bernadette. My mom and I have been wanting to see this movie since it was in theaters. Despite all the bad reviews, it just looked like a pretty good time. But we missed it because it was only in theaters for like 2 weeks. So we finally watched it, and it was not worth this kind of wait at all. I love Richard Linklater, but I don't know what the hell he was trying to do here. Part of me feels stupid for not getting the point of this whole thing, but another part of me is like, I don't care about the point, nor do I think it was communicated well at all. It's just really clunky, and some of the editing choices are so awkward. No offense to the 5% of viewers of mine who are over 40, but this is a movie made by someone over 40 for people over 40. Just kind of corny all around and nothing to write home about, in my opinion. Then I rewatched 20th Century Women for my podcast. Just as good the second time around, that's all I gotta say. Then I watched a Netflix stand-up special from Sam J called 3 in the Morning. I had never heard of Sam J before this and only knew about this special because of a promotional post from Netflix on Instagram, and boy was I not disappointed. This is probably my favorite stand-up special of the year so far. Sam J has a fresh and exciting approach to storytelling that is never not hilarious in some sort of way. If you're looking for a sharp, no bullshit special, this is the one. Then I watched the new Seth Rogen movie, An American Pickle. I get why people don't love this, but I kinda enjoyed myself. It's a movie about an Orthodox Jewish factory worker from 1920 who wakes up in modern times and tracks down his long-lost grandson, but then a bunch of other things happen, and it's like, at one point, it's kind of a metaphor on Donald Trump, sort of. Only during one part, really, though. Like, I get it's super clunky and definitely needs to be longer than 80 minutes, but I think because of how much it switches up and keeps changing tones, I never got bored with this. I think it's a pretty unique movie that actually looks really nice. I love how it has this consistently dark gray color palette no matter what time period we're in. I really appreciate a movie that knows how to embrace a silly premise and really drag it the fuck out to a point where it's kind of stupid. There's a heart here that I wanted to get but didn't really at all, but besides that, it ain't too bad. Then I watched Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, my favorite film of the year so far. There have been some great movies this year, don't get me wrong, but this is the first one that's really knocked my socks off, a feeling that I haven't had in a minute. This is the first film I've seen by Eliza Hittman, and just based on this, I can tell she knows exactly what she's doing. Not only is she a master at telling a story with little to no dialogue, but she knew exactly how to use it for a story like this. Empathy is a huge thing to keep in mind when telling a story about pregnancy and abortion, because knowing how it's a thing that has been done many times, the filmmaker has to do something really special to make the viewer want to explore the minds of these people yourself. Hittman does this. I have never felt more attached to a protagonist in a film with this kind of subject matter. It's a film that is pretty close to perfect, full of amazing performances and some beautiful cinematography that ties everything together. Then I watched Hitch. Not a big fan of rom-coms over here, though maybe I'm just not watching the right rom-coms. And hey, this is not an exception. As smooth and sexy as Will Smith can be at times, it just isn't enough to save what is a mediocre time. I also don't like Kevin James for no reason whatsoever. whatsoever. I'm sorry, KJ. Then I watched Jim Jarmusch's Stranger Than Paradise. This is, without a doubt, the most I've personally seen Jarmusch embrace the drifting aspect of his work. Dead Man does it better in my opinion, but this is that aspect done pretty extensively. He's really one of the only filmmakers who can have little to no action happening on screen and still make you invested, and sometimes that action might not even have a point to it. A lot of that is due to the fact that he simply understands human interaction. It's not just putting a camera on an actor in a location and hoping it works, it's building a character we're familiar with body language we're familiar with locations we're familiar with. To immerse yourself in a Jarmusch film is to lose yourself in the details, to not watch characters but instead be with them, to let loose and glide from one place to the next, each feeling the same because the human behavior is never not present. I think this film specifically is capturing that feeling extremely well, and sure, a lot of you might find it pretty boring, but I think it's one of the more interesting watches out there. Speaking of simple, then I watched my first Robert Bresson film, A Man Escaped. I usually don't make a huge deal out of starting a filmmaker's work, but Bresson has proven after watching this is someone I deeply admire. His minimalist approach and precision makes him one of the best filmmakers of all time. Someone who just plain gets it. A Man Escaped is a fantastic example of minimalist film, not wasting a single second to tell you a story full of frustration and suspense. I would love to elaborate, but this is not the only Bresson film I watched this month, nor is it the best. Then I watched Hands on a Hardbody, the documentary. This is Quentin Tarantino's favorite documentary, and I completely understand why. I have not had this much fun with a documentary, or any film for that matter, in a long-ass time. Rural America is a specific kind of strange that is so often portrayed lazily in mainstream cinema, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, rural America is a good time to make fun of, but no film ever feels like it knows how to have fun with the culture while also properly exploring it. This documentary hit it out of the park, not just in what it's saying, but how it's saying it. This thing looks like dog shit. I mean, your family's camcorder footage of you as a kid probably looks better than some of this. But in my opinion, that's so much of the appeal here. It's dirty, it's hilarious, it's kind of sad, and it's insanely entertaining. I had an absolute blast watching it, and I cannot recommend it enough. Then I watched The Virgin Suicides, directed by Sofia Coppola. I've wanted to watch this since high school and never had until now. That said, I wish I watched it back then because I probably would have liked it a bit more. On Letterboxd, I compared this to Mysterious Skin, despite them being two completely different movies, because they do have some similarities. They're both films tackling a darker subject through the lens of a high school coming-of-age film, and all I'm saying is Mysterious Skin is a film that can get you to understand that teenage angst even when you aren't a teenager. Virgin Suicides feels just a little lost in what it's trying to do there. Sofia Coppola got so much better at capturing youth in later work like The Bling Ring, because here there are spots that feel incredibly empty, specifically near the third act. I really wanted to love this, I really did, but it just felt like one giant Tumblr post that I forgot about the next day, unfortunately. Then I watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the first time. Similar to Beetlejuice, this is a live-action film that can let loose just as much as animation does, this one being partially animated. What I love most about it is hands down the technical achievements at play here. Like, goddamn, for the 80s, this looks unbelievable. Not only does it look good on its own, it just runs super smoothly as far as the narrative goes. Personally, I think it's fantastic. It's not my thing, which is why that arbitrary score you saw earlier isn't a 5, but I still really appreciate it for what it is. It's just a ton of fun. Then I watched the Playmobil movie. Then I watched My Life as a Zucchini for the second time. Fun fact for anyone who didn't already know, but Celine Sciamma, the director for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, was a writer on this film, and it shows. The simplicity of this works just as much the second time as it did the first. I love how fragile this film is. It perfectly captures the innocence of being a child, but still manages to be brutally honest in how trauma is handled. The stop motion is also so pretty in this. Love those heads, you know? It's on Netflix if you haven't seen it, and it's shorter than most of my podcast episodes. Then I watched Sakurao, a Brazilian film from 2019 that I missed at Cannes. I would love to describe the plot, but the best way to watch this movie is going in completely blind, so I'm gonna avoid doing so. I'm actually not gonna say much about this because seriously, I don't want to ruin any of it for you. It starts as something and turns into something completely unexpected. I've already said too much. All the performances are very entertaining, specifically that of Silverio Pereira. It was an emotional roller coaster that I will not be forgetting about anytime soon. Then I watched Kelly Reichardt's Wendy and Lucy. Oh my god, I love this movie. Like, I literally think this is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. This is a very simple film about a woman who loses her dog on her way to Alaska. If it sounds sad, it is. It's probably even sadder than you think it is. I really connected to it though. I am very different from Wendy in a lot of different ways, but what does it say that I was still able to empathize with her on an extremely emotional level? Kelly Reichardt captures a vulnerability in Wendy that you don't see very often. It's a film about loneliness, poverty, shitty Christian high school kids working at grocery grocery stores, and a glimpse into a town I've never been to, but feel pretty familiar with having seen the movie. Kelly Reichardt's visual approach to it is also never not beautiful. Every shot is framed in a way that makes the character really feel like they're a part of the location for the time being. I truly can't put into words why this film in particular really stuck with me, but it did. I loved it. Then I watched the new Xavier Dolan film Mathias and Maximilian. I was really excited for this and was kind of disappointed. As far as a visual aesthetic goes, I think it's extremely my thing. I mean, the poster and most shots are really nice to look at. The color palette, the clothing, Xavier Dolan's face, it's all quite the treat. But good looks can only get you so far, especially when your film is a drama like this. I personally just couldn't connect to these characters. I think they just lacked a chemistry that I'm aware isn't able to be shown up front, but is still pretty necessary to make me feel anything about what happens to them. Like, I get that he has mommy issues, I get that they're both dissatisfied, but why? Do more to show that to me. I'm sorry, I'd probably just pissed off a lot of people. It just felt a little empty and obsessed with itself. But hey, if I looked like that, I'd be too, so I can't blame it. Then I watched Little Shop of Horrors, the theatrical version. Don't worry, as soon as it ended, we did watch the director's cut on YouTube, or the alternate ending, whatever you call it. That was weird. I had a total blast with this film though. The music was really catchy. Usually I'm a little turned off by musicals because, well, I don't know, they're just not my thing most of the time, but this was a load of fun and felt like it knew what tone it was going for every step of the way. Rick Moranis is pretty great in this. I wouldn't take him as someone to star in a musical, but this made me convinced he's the ideal person for it. The effects for Audrey 2 were also really well done and look better than most effects today, which is unsurprising coming from Frank Oz. I also got takeout movie popcorn for this movie with my buds, and I gotta say, although I was in my home, it felt really nice to sort of feel like I was at the movies again. Fuck, I miss it. Then I watched Heathers for the first time. So embarrassing, I know. This has to be one of the funniest screenplays I've ever witnessed. Dead gay son, patronized bunnies, chainsaw, it's all great. I'm surprised at how little this was spoiled for me. I had no idea what the plot was, and I was hooked the entire time. It is really just one of those movies that has a little bit of everything, and does a little bit of everything really well. Great suspense, great drama, and obviously great humor. Winona Ryder is fantastic, and Christian Slater does a fantastic Jack Nicholson impression the entire time. If you haven't seen it, don't make the same mistake I did and wait this long. Get on it now. Then I watched Robert Bresson's L'Argent, my second Bresson film of the month. I'm aware I pronounced Bresson and Bresson two different ways in this video. I don't know which one it is. This is so far my favorite of his films. I actually can't tell you how quote-unquote my thing this is. Like, wow. I wish I had watched this before making my own short film because it gave me a lot of ideas. The way he specifically uses doors is just so weirdly beautiful. The way he shoots everything in this is kind of beautiful. It's so simple, not a minute is wasted. Despite how cynical it feels, I actually felt weirdly good by the end. I don't really know what to say. I hate saying I'm speechless, but this really left me at a loss for words, which I think is the best feeling to have at the end of a movie. Bresson is already one of my favorites of all time, and I've just scratched the surface, so I'm so excited to keep moving forward. Then I finished things off with She Dies Tomorrow. My expectations going into this was that it'd be a really trippy, slow, atmospheric film, which it was. What I didn't expect was how goofy it was too. Like, at one point it felt almost like an Adult Swim sketch, but not in a bad way, although I do wish it were a bit more tonally consistent. I like how it makes it clear that you shouldn't take its entirety that seriously, and if I was supposed to take it all seriously, oops. But let's not beat around the bush. This is a film trying to capture the anxiety that comes with death and when you'll die and how you'll die and what'll happen when you die. It's about thoughts that, for too many reasons, are very relevant right now. As far as how it captured that feeling, I thought it nailed it in, at times, a really scary way. But don't let that freak you out. I did leave feeling a bit more relieved than you'd expect from watching this. It's a very unique and above all beautiful film in both its cinematography and sound design. Like, if you're gonna watch this, please watch it on the biggest screen you can find in complete darkness with headphones on. And hey, that's what I watched this month. By the way, I have a Twitch now where I've been streaming Q&As on a weekly basis. The link is in the description if you are interested. So with all that being said, thanks for watching. Go watch all these movies and form your own opinions, and I'll see you guys in the next one.